You're listening to Keith Sports News. Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome to KSN episode 60. Already 60 episodes in about 7 months. Yeah, because I started this channel about 7 months ago. Well, this series, this podcast, me talking about sports on a weekly basis, twice a week, mainly Mondays and Fridays. And for those of you that have, been following this channel, thank you very much. Because there are some people that actually do care. Without you guys, I probably wouldn't be doing this. It's just something that I wanted to try out, because I've been getting into listening to other podcasts. Speaking of that, I will tell you a list of all my favorite podcasts, and I will do that in the next episode of KSN. That's right. You heard it. You're finally going to hear my favorite sports talk podcast. I think I did an episode about that, but that was back in December. That was like the early episodes of KSN, but I've added more podcasts ever since late last year, alright? So, times have kind of changed, alright? So anyways, 60 episodes in 7 months, that's amazing. Yeah. And those live streams I did of me watching sports, I'm glad those went well. I've been kind of, I kind of started doing that. I don't know when I'll go live again on this channel. I'll probably just go live whenever. So that's why make sure you turn on that notification bell, alright? Because the last time I went live, it was for the MLB All-Star Game, and I didn't say in a previous episode of KSN, you didn't hear me say, hey, I'm gonna do a live stream of me watching the game. I didn't say that. I just went live. Because at the time, I didn't make my decision yet. I kind of made my decision the night before the game. So that's why I just went live. And surprisingly, a lot of people tuned in, especially towards the end of the game. Like, I legitimately had like 40 people watching. Which is insane. So I'm glad that stream went well. It didn't get blocked or anything. So, I thank y'all. Alright. Okay. So, episode 60. What are we going to talk about? Yes, I used to say that quite a bit of times in my early episodes of KSN, but then later I kind of just forgot about saying that tagline. What are we going to talk about? However, I'll tell you why I said that. It's because I made a Google document of a list of things to talk about for certain episodes of KSN. So today, main thing I'm going to talk about is the Canadian Football League. For those of you that have been following the episodes, y'all know that I'm a big fan of the Canadian Football League, the CFL. It is my number one favorite sports league because I've watched almost every game live, which is pretty impressive, right? And you can do that because none of the games are on at the same time. Alright? Saturday night was a big night for fighting. I'll talk about that later. And the MLB season, regular season, has resumed. And at the end of this episode, I have a little announcement I want to make. So I'll save that for last. Alright? Let's talk about the CFL Week 6. The recap. Alright, so you heard me talk about the Thursday night game on the last episode of KSN on Friday. So I'm going to talk about the next 3 games. Friday night football. Friday night football was the Calgary Stampeders against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a rematch from the Stampede Bowl earlier this month. And the CFL on TSN panel were on the field. Before I talk about the game, Milt Stegall came back. For those of you that follow the league, Milt Stegall came back, and they honored him. The PA announcer says, "Please welcome back to the CFL on TSN, Milt Stegall," and the crowd gave him a huge standing ovation. So I'm glad to see Milt Stegall back. And I was kind of watching some of the pregame show, because, you know, they were on the field, and there was this one segment of the show where they had like food on the desk, and Milt Stegall in front of him it's this giant ass hamburger. And they were like, the others were telling him to take a bite out of it, and he was holding it, and it looked like he was gonna take a bite, but he basically says, "No, I can't do it. I can't do it." That was funny. Ugh. Oh my goodness. I want to know who cooked that burger. Was it Matt Dunnigan? Man, I miss that guy. We never got to figure out why he's no longer on the CFL on TSN panel. Matt Dunnigan. But I remember when he was on there, he's mainly in the studio, but sometimes he's also in the broadcast booth. Yeah. So I hope he's doing well. I hope somehow they can bring him back, maybe as a special guest. Maybe for the Grey Cup. That would be cool. But that was everyone's favorite. So, but it was great to see Milt Stegall back, nonetheless. Winnipeg Blue Bomber legend. So it was a rematch from a couple weeks ago from the Stampede Bowl. This time it's in Winnipeg, and I did pick Winnipeg to win. Thought they would get revenge on the Stampeders here. The announcers, I believe, were Rod Smith and Paul LaPolice. Now, Paul LaPolice used to be the Calgary Stampeders. No, excuse me. He used to be the Ottawa Red Blacks coach. And then after he got fired, he joined the CFL on TSN. Okay, so this was a big matchup. I had a feeling that this game would be pretty close, unlike the one from the Stampede Bowl. The score from the Stampede Bowl a couple weeks ago, that was in Calgary, 37-16. Okay. So the Stampeders, they won that game by 21 points. Well, the same thing happened again. The Stampeders won. They beat the Blue Bombers again by 21 points. Now that, I find that more surprising, because they did it again. They beat the Blue Bombers by 21 points again, but they beat them on the Blue Bombers field. Yeah, that's something. Alright. However, turnovers. Turnovers are the key for a game like this. Turnovers, they're killers. Turnovers are killers. And I'm looking on tsn.com or tsn.ca for Canada. You can check the stats, and the turnovers are the big factor. 6 turnovers for the Blue Bombers. What? Yeah. That says it all right there. That says it all. I mean, 6. Normally you don't see 6 turnovers in any football game. You know? So, first quarter was close. Second quarter, at halftime, the Stampeders were winning 17-13. So I'm like, all right, got a good game here. I assume it would be a much better game than the Stampede Bowl. But then the second half was pretty much all Stampeders. And at one point in the fourth quarter, there was an interception return. And it was just a terrible pass by the Blue Bombers quarterback. It was like he threw it right to the Stampeders defender, and he just marched into the end zone like it was easy, So after that, I was like, oh, this might be it. At one point, it was 41-13. And the Blue Bombers got a late touchdown. So that I was surprised. Stampeders dominated that game. And now, all of a sudden, the Stampeders are like the best team in the CFL. And it's weird, because their one loss was against the Ottawa Red Blacks. The Red Blacks are not that good of a team. And somehow the Red Blacks beat the Stampeders in Calgary. And I remember watching that game. That was like about a month ago. The weather was not pretty in Calgary. It was like the first day of summer. And it was not a summer felt like day up there. It was like, what was it like, in the 45 something degrees, and it was raining. Like, I wonder if the weather was much nicer. Maybe the Stampeders would have won that game. I don't know. But I think the Stampeders are now the best team in the league. Alright, Saturday night's game. Another rematch. It was the Saskatchewan Roughriders at the BC Lions, and I think I picked the BC Lions to win this game, mainly because they're the home team. And last week, the Stampeders beat the Roughriders at Saskatchewan by 2 touchdowns. So I'm like, I don't know if the Roughriders can bounce back from that loss. But that was kind of a tough game for me to pick. And let me see here. Let me find the... Okay. So yeah, this was on Saturday night. I was watching the
Roughriders are
2 things at once. I'll tell you what I was watching on the other TV. Alright. This game here, Saskatchewan, they scored an early touchdown, and then they scored a field goal. After the first quarter, it was 17-8 Roughriders. And it's like, uh-oh. Roughriders might dominate this game. And it looked like they were. It looked like they were going to dominate this game. It was 23-11 at halftime. So I'm like, looks like the Roughriders are going to bounce back from that loss. And they did. They basically did. However, the Lions, they kind of came back, but it was too little too late. It was basically too little too late. Excuse me, I gotta blow my nose. Alright, I'm back. And, yeah. So, the BC Lions, they scored they scored some points late in the game, but too little too late. So, it was basically a one-sided game, even though the score looked like it was closer 33-27, but it was 33-11 until 1 minute and 48 seconds left. Yeah, you can say it's kind of like the Super Bowl earlier this year, you know? It was a one-sided game until the fourth quarter. The score looked closer, but it was mainly a one-sided game. Alright. And then the Sunday night game was between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Ottawa Red Blacks. I forgot which team I picked to win, but excuse me. I think I picked I don't remember. I really don't remember which team I picked. I'll have to, you know what, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to my last episode and find out which team I picked between those two teams. Alright. It turns out I picked the Hamilton Tiger Cats to win because they are a better team than the Ottawa Red Blacks, and I was right on that one. The Tiger Cats did win that game 30-15. Yeah, so the Saturday and Sunday night games, I didn't listen to the broadcast because I was listening to music. All right. The second half of that game between the Tiger Cats and the Red Blacks, the game was in Ottawa. It was like raining there. Yeah, it's like after halftime, it's like, oh man, rain. Yeah. It's funny, like, it's weird. Ottawa has only one win, and that win was against, I guess, now the best team in the league, the Calgary Stampeders. So let's check the standings here. The Edmonton Elks did not play in week 6. So after week 6, the East Division, both the Montreal Alouettes and the Calgary Stampeders are 4-2. Okay, followed by the Toronto Argonauts. Oh, okay, I got the standings up. Yeah. Oh, both the Argonauts and the Ottawa Red Blacks are both 1-5. Remember, the Argonauts, they won the Grey Cup last year. Somehow they can win it again. Yeah, because, you know, there's still a long ways to go. The Grey Cup is not until another 4 months, like less than 4 months. That's Sunday before America's Thanksgiving. I say America's Thanksgiving because Canada has a different Thanksgiving date, which is, I think it's on a Monday, like the second Monday of October, which means there would be a CFL game on that Monday afternoon. Yeah, interesting. Just like a Labor Day Monday, they would do that as well. Except, you know, labor, in America, it's spelled L-A-B-O-R. In Canada, it's spelled L-A-B-O-U-R. You know, like hour, Labor Day, but it's pronounced the same, alright? It's like Sports Center, the American version, the center part, S-C-E-N-T-E-R, but in Canada, it's C-E-N-T-R-E, like center court. Center court is spelled C-E-N-T-R-E, but the same pronunciation. Alright, in the West Division, both the Calgary Stampeders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders are 5-1, but the Stampeders have that head-to-head because they beat the Roughriders. Winnipeg Blue Bombers are 3-2. The BC Lions are 3-4, and the Edmonton Elks are 1-4. And that is your CFL week 7. I thought it was week 6. This is already week 7. There's 21 there's 21 weeks in the regular season, so each team plays 18 games, which means those teams have 3 byes. All right. Okay. So I'm not going now. Normally, I would give you my predictions for the following week, this upcoming Thursday night football game. However, I'm not going to do that in this episode. It's because I'm going to save my announcement on what I have to say at the end of this episode. Alright, so just bear with me. I'm not going to make any predictions for the next week, and I'll tell you why later at the end of this episode. Alright, so moving on. So this past Saturday night was a big night for fighting. Mainly the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Now, normally, I don't talk about boxing or MMA or pro wrestling, the ring sports. I normally don't talk about that because I don't really watch much of today's WWE, UFC, and boxing. But once in a while, I will. And usually it would be pro wrestling. Alright? Yeah, this past Saturday night was a big night for fighting events. The Saturday before that was a big day for pro wrestling. Alright? So, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, my big brother, my oldest brother, he's a huge fan of the UFC. So, we were kind of messaging each other. I was like, hey, UFC tonight in New Orleans. Yes, that's right. Yeah, so for those of you that follow the UFC, it came back to New Orleans for the first time in 10 years. 2015 was the last time there was a UFC event in New Orleans. That's kind of weird because New Orleans, in my opinion, I mean, I'm from South Louisiana, so I've obviously been to New Orleans before. But New Orleans, I think, is a great city to host big events. They host a lot of Super Bowls, for example, including this year's. The reason why I say New Orleans is a great city to host big events is because, well, mainly the Superdome and the Smoothie King Center. You know, they're next to each other, and it's in downtown. There's a lot of hotels. They're walking distance. And that happened to me. Yeah, for example, the last time I was at the Superdome was 6 years ago. July of 2019. What was I there for? It wasn't football, because that's the NFL offseason. It was actually for a concert. And do you know what concert I saw? This might shock you if you know this band. The Rolling Stones. That's right. I saw the Rolling Stones. One of the best, greatest, if not the best, greatest band ever in rock and roll history. I saw that band live at a concert in the Superdome. I did. And we stayed at a hotel. It was part of my vacation, okay? Yeah. And before that, I haven't been to the Super Bowl, I think, Superdome. I said Super Bowl. Superdome. I think the last time I went there was like in 2014. So, but before that, I would go to quite a bit of Saints games. And I gotta be honest, that was like in the early 2010s. I didn't really like going to Saints games. You know, I wasn't... Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I wasn't really a sports fan at the time, and, you know, I didn't really get into sports until like 2013. So yeah. But when I saw the Rolling Stones in the Superdome, I really enjoyed myself. I really did, because that was history. That band is history. All right. So, and that night we stayed at a hotel, so we just had to walk. Don't have to worry about parking or the traffic, you know. So that's the best part about New Orleans of hosting big events, is that the hotels, you don't have to walk, you don't have to travel by car. You know what I'm saying? You can just walk. If you're staying at a hotel, you can walk to the venue and walk back to the hotel. I've done that in Houston. Minute Maid Park, well, no longer called Minute Maid Park, but I still call it Minute Maid Park, and I think most people do as well. Home of the Houston Astros and the Toyota Center. I'm pretty sure it's still called the Toyota Center, home of the Houston Rockets. I did the same thing to those venues because that's in downtown. I walk to the venues and walk back to the hotel. It's great. It's great. But NRG Stadium, home of the Houston Texans, that's not in downtown. They have a big parking lot, but there's no hotels around surrounding the stadium, unlike the Superdome in New Orleans, you know. So, but yeah, the UFC. Back to the UFC. It was in the Smoothie King Center. Okay, first time in 10 years, and I always wondered, why did it take them 10 years to come back to a city like New Orleans? Like, every year they're in Las Vegas, New York, you know, the big money cities. I know New Orleans isn't a big money city, but you know what I mean, right? So I messaged my brother. I'll read some of our messages because, you know, he's a big UFC fan. I said, UFC tonight in New Orleans. And he said, hell yeah, I have it on last night. So Friday night, they had amateurs and had 5 Louisiana fighters win. They even had Melvin Gillard fight on 20-day notice. He's from Baton Rouge, the capital city. He lost, though. The first women's fight about 15 minutes ago. This was the early prelims, okay? So the early prelims were at 5 p.m. and then the regular prelims were at 7 p.m. Central, and then the main card was at 9 p.m. Now the main card is the actual pay-per-view itself. So yeah, the first women's fight, the girl from Louisiana won. Then he says, I think Lil Wayne, the rapper, I think he's also from New Orleans, is going to come out with Dustin Poirier. But so far they have been very nice on hyping up Louisiana and advertisement. It's good business for the state. Yes, it is. Even the announcers are advertising good stuff in Louisiana. Daniel Cormier is from Lafayette. And he was the UFC heavyweight champ. Good night for the boys in the boot. Yeah, the boot. They call Louisiana the boot state because it's like the shape of a boot. Or actually, you know, if you follow college football, every year Arkansas plays LSU for the battle of the boot trophy, because, you know, you got Louisiana and then Arkansas above Louisiana. It's like a shape of a giant boot, you know? So that's like their rivalry, kind of. Yeah. And then I ask, what took them so long to come back? It's been 10 years. And then he says, because of the crime. Yeah, Louisiana. Then he says, New Orleans is so dangerous. Louisiana is a very dangerous state. Yeah, mainly South Louisiana. North Louisiana, it's like totally different. I have 2 other brothers that live in North Louisiana, and they basically say, oh yeah, it's nothing like South Louisiana. It's like they can make a separate state, North Louisiana and South Louisiana. It's kind of like North Dakota and South Dakota, North Carolina, South Carolina, you know. Um, yeah, and that was basically it. So, um, I had it on in the background, but I wasn't really actually watching it. All right, because the CFL game was on at the same time as well, so I had both events on at the same time. But I did the same thing like I've done before on Saturday evenings. I would have both broadcasts on mute while I'm listening to music, kind of like when you're at a restaurant that has a bunch of TVs in the background. You'll hear music instead. So that's kind of what I did. And excuse me. After the CFL game ended, there was another fighting event. It was a boxing event that had Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is a well-known boxer, and apparently he fought. He fought on Saturday night, and I'm half Filipino, so he's a Filipino boxer, all right? And I thought he was done fighting because of his age. He's 46. That is an old age for boxing. It really is. Because it's brutal, man. It's really brutal. So he's also a politician, and he was also a senator for the Philippines. So that's amazing. He's done a lot. But when you're at that age, you're no longer in your prime as an athlete. When you're in your 20s, you're in your prime. You know what I'm saying? It's like 20 years ago he was in his prime. Alright? So, his last fight, I believe, was in 2019. And I thought after that, that's it. That's it. No more. Because of his age. But he fought. He actually fought. He actually fought on Saturday night. And I had it in the background, but I wasn't really watching it because I was doing something on my computer. But I was afraid that he was going to get embarrassed because of his age. Kind of like old Mike Tyson when he fought Jake Paul back in November of last year, So, but that didn't happen. My father watched the fight, and we were kind of talking about it. I was mainly watching the UFC, though, because to me, that's bigger. More people watch UFC than boxing in general. So, basically, I heard that Manny Pacquiao he was supposed to win, but he got robbed. He didn't lose. They said the fight was a draw. And I'm like, what? Okay. But then I was told that they might have a rematch later this year. And both fighters agreed to have a rematch, so guess we'll see if they'll have a rematch or not. So, yeah. I kind of wish... Well, actually, no. I do wish that both of those events weren't on at the same time. Or at the same night, that same evening. I wish they weren't on at the same evening, but it is what it is. Saturday clearly is the biggest day for sports in general. So that was kind of what I was watching. Yeah. Fight night. That UFC event was a really long one, and I guess it should have been, because 10 years since they last went to New Orleans, so they put on a great event. It was a huge success. Bruce Buffer, Michael Buffer is Bruce's older brother. Bruce Buffer, he's like killing it. He sounds like he's still in his prime, like he's in his late 60s and he can still, excuse me, be himself. So, yeah, he's Bruce Buffer. He's been doing it for a long time, and Bruce Buffer was actually at the Preakness horse racing back in May, 2 months ago. Wow, that was 2 months ago already. Wow. He did the Riders Up, and he would like call it like he's doing it in the UFC. So that was kind of funny. And I was watching an old home run derby last week, and Michael Buffer was there doing the introductions of the players. So that was cool. And of course, I watched that old pro wrestling. He would do the WCW World Championship Wrestling, the main event, which is the last match of the show. So, yeah, we always like him. So, I wonder why Joe Rogan wasn't there. Like, Joe Rogan is a UFC commentator, or unless if he's no longer a UFC commentator. I forgot to ask my brother why. I wonder why he wasn't there. But Daniel Cormier was there. Normally Joe Rogan does the interviews after they announce the winner of the fights. So he would get in the octagon and interview the winner, but he wasn't there. Instead, it was Daniel Cormier that was doing the interviews, as he should, because, he's from South Louisiana anyways. I've always liked him. DC, he's a cool guy. And he also... The cool thing about him is that I remember when he was the UFC champion, heavyweight champion. And recent years, DC would talk to... he would interview pro wrestlers around, WrestleMania time. So I was listening to his interview with John Cena before WrestleMania 41 this year. So yeah, and one night he was like a special guest referee. So that was cool of him. But yeah, he's great. So the UFC event was a huge success. It ended after midnight. Yeah, after midnight in New Orleans. Now, yeah, New Orleans, people stay up all night in New Orleans partying. I remember I was staying at a hotel in New Orleans, and I would look out the window, and I would see people walking on the streets at like 3 a.m. They have like a CVS and a Walgreens that are open 24 hours. So, yeah, not too far off of Bourbon Street. So, yeah. Alright, so moving on now. The MLB has resumed their regular season, and in the last episode I gave you my predictions on which teams will win the division, so if you're interested, go check out the last episode here. So before the All-Star break, every Saturday evening they would have that Fox Baseball Night in America at like 6:15 p.m. Central Time, and no other games on that evening. It would just be that Fox game, right? Because they want to make you watch that Fox game. Well, after the All-Star break, they're still doing that, but they're having more evening games for other teams, so that's cool. That's how it should be anyways, because it's the summer season. It's too hot during the daytime for a lot of cities to play outdoor baseball. You heard me complaining that the Atlanta Braves don't have a roof when they really should have a roof, because it gets hot there a lot in the summer, and it also rains there a lot. So yeah, they would do that, like, I've noticed they would do that every year. Before the All-Star break, that Saturday evening, just Fox games. And then after the All-Star break, they would still have the Fox games, but a bunch of other games as well during the evening. I remember I tuned in to MLB Network Saturday evening because it says it was called MLB Big Innings. So I was like, what is that? So I tuned in, and they were showing 4 games at the same time. That's cool, because there was a bunch of games on at the same time. So I just wanted to see what that was, but then I went back to the UFC event. Maybe I'll do that. If they're doing that again this Saturday evening, I might tune in for that, if I remember. So, yeah. And then, if you're a golf fan, I'm not a golf fan, but the big thing this weekend was the Open Championships, or the British Open, some people would call it that. I was watching some of the TSN Sports Center, and they have Scottie Scheffler has won another major, and it was the Open. The Open, I believe, was in England. Yeah, like the weekend after Wimbledon ended in tennis. Yeah. So, and that's pretty much, let's see here, any big news? They had the WNBA All-Star Game. I didn't watch that. I had no interest in watching that. And plus that game was on a Saturday evening. I didn't if it was on a Sunday maybe, but I think it should have been on a Sunday in my opinion. I think the WNBA All-Star Game would have more ratings if it was on a Sunday night instead of Saturday night, because the biggest event happening on Saturday night was the UFC. A lot of people watch the UFC. I mean, I'm not a big UFC fan, but that was the #1 trending on Twitter or X, you know? Because sometimes Sunday night, there's not much happening. You got Sunday Night Baseball, CFL game, no wrestling. You might as well have the WNBA All-Star Game. I assume it was on ABC, but, yeah. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about, I apologize, I have allergies all of a sudden. It's like as soon as I started this episode, I have the sniffles, I have to like keep pausing the video to blow my nose. It's kind of like, ugh. Thankfully, I have that option to pause the recording. So, excuse me. Stay hydrated, it's summertime. So, the last thing I want to talk about is my little announcement. All right. So, well, I have one more thing to say before that last announcement. Okay. So, earlier I said that in the next episode, I'm going to give you my favorite sports talk podcasts, okay? And that's going to be the only thing I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to straight up tell you my favorite sports podcasts in the next episode, which means I will not talk about what's happening this upcoming weekend. And that's why I didn't give you my CFL predictions of next week or this upcoming Thursday night, all right? Which leads to my announcement. Sports talk podcasts. Okay, you guys know that sometimes I would mention that, mainly, certain shows. Well, yeah, I have been listening to a lot. Okay? I've been doing that for the past couple of years, but back then I didn't listen to as much, but then over the years I would listen to more and more shows. And this is like the most I've ever listened to. Okay? And we're in the summer season, right? And during the summer season, a lot of shows, a lot of podcasts, mainly the host would take a vacation, all right? Sometimes some shows, when that person is on vacation, someone else would be filling in as a substitute host. But some shows, when that person's on vacation, that means the show is on a break, a little hiatus, meaning there's no substitute fill in for that host. Okay. And usually they would do that during the summer because a lot of people take a vacation during the summer anyways, especially if that person is a parent, that person has, a family, that person's married, that person has children, and they would go on like a family vacation, all right? But if you're single, you don't have to worry about that, You're on your own. You can do whatever you want, all right? Some people like being single. Yeah. So, yeah, so I've noticed for the past couple of weeks, some shows would be on breaks. All right, so I'll give you some. I'll name some shows that are on breaks, or meaning the host was on a break. Dan Patrick, a well-known guy, he was on a break last week, but I think he might be coming back this week. Same with Shine on Sports with Adam Shine on Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio. He was on vacation. He didn't even. Yeah, so those two guys, I didn't get to hear what they have to say about the Home Run Derby last week and the MLB All-Star Game because they were on vacation. So, yeah, let me pull up the list. I'm not going to tell you the list in this episode. I'll tell you that in the next one. Excuse me for a moment. Okay. Stephen A. Smith. He's been on vacation for the past couple of weeks. Okay, he's another one. And there are certain shows where I would listen to during certain times of the year. But there are some shows where I can listen to all year long, all year around. All right, because there are certain shows where they'll talk about just a certain sport, like a football podcast, a baseball podcast. But then you got the ones where I would listen to all year, where they would talk about more than one sport. So yeah. Let's see here. Any more? Oh, another guy, Rich Eisen, another well-known guy. He's great friends with Dan Patrick. He's on vacation, and you know who filled in for him on Wednesday and Thursday? WWE wrestler Seth Rollins. Yeah, and I listened to that entire episode, both of them. It's a 3 hours, but without. I didn't listen to it live. I listened to it as an archive. So as an archive, it's about 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I was listening to, because I do know Seth Rollins. When I used to be a big fan of the WWE, Seth Rollins was my favorite wrestler, and I enjoyed him being the guest host of the Rich Eisen show. He's one of those guys where I can listen to talk for a while. There's certain people, yeah, and he's one of them. I heard that he got injured. I guess that was legit. If that's legit, then that's very unfortunate for him. Maybe that's why I wonder if that's the reason why he became the guest host, because of his injury. I don't know. But yeah, Rich Eisen, he's on vacation last week, so I couldn't get to hear him talk about the MLB All-Star Game and the Home Run Derby. All right. I heard that Buster Olney from Baseball Tonight on ESPN, he came back. And I listened to the episode of him talking with Tim Kirchin. I heard that Buster, he fell down and he hit his forehead on the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh. And Buster, I think he's 60 years old. He doesn't look like he's that old, but that just shows you how long he's been around covering the sport, the league. So that's why he wasn't that's the main reason why he wasn't at the All-Star game. Tim Kirchin was, because he was on ESPN radio's broadcast. And let me tell you, I would have listened to the ESPN radio's broadcast of the MLB All-Star Game if the players were still wearing ugly uniforms. And that's what I did the past couple of years. Last year, the year before that, I didn't watch the game because they were wearing ugly uniforms, so I went old school and I listened to ESPN radio. And finally this year they stopped doing that crap. They're not wearing, they didn't wear ugly uniforms anymore. They were wearing their regular uniforms, and that is the reason why I did a live stream of me watching the game. And that went well, alright? Yeah, that's about it. So, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because this leads to my announcement. I have announced that I will be taking a break. Yes, this podcast will go on a hiatus for a couple of weeks. I think I need a little break doing this podcast, and I think I chose the right time of the year to do that. And I know summer is... I know they do have a lot of sports going on in the summer, but let's be real, guys. The podcasts that I would listen to, they would mainly talk about the National Football League, the National Basketball Association, and Major League Baseball. Now, National Hockey League, they don't really talk... The podcasts that I would listen to, they don't really talk about the National Hockey League until mainly the playoffs. But I do have NHL, I do have Sirius XM, and there's an NHL network station that I can listen to. Same thing with the MLB station, NFL station, and NBA station. But it's mainly NFL, NBA, and MLB. Well, the NBA season ended over a month ago. I know we got the NBA Summer League. I don't watch that. I really don't care about that. And I really don't want to hear... I don't really want to hear NFL news until we're getting closer to the start of the regular season, which isn't until the Thursday after Labor Day, so that's still about a month and a half away, alright? So we got MLB. Now, obviously, the season gets more interesting as the season goes on. The season gets more interesting towards when you get closer to the postseason, right? But the postseason isn't until October. October might be the best month in sports because you got, obviously, National Football League, the beginning of the NBA and NHL, and of course, the most important, MLB postseason. So yeah, October might be the best sports because you got the 4 major sports in action. Alright, so I figured it's time for me to take a break on this podcast. Keith Sports News, KSN, after doing 60 episodes. But I will do one more episode later this week of me talking about all of my favorite podcasts, and I'll give you my thoughts on what I think of those shows that I listen to. All right, and then after that episode, I'm gonna take a little break. It'll be for a couple of weeks, and I think I'm gonna come back on... It's gonna be sometime next month in August. I think I'm gonna come back on Monday, August the 11th. I think that's the date I'm gonna come back. Alright. And I believe that's when the United States Open tennis begins, because that's the last Grand Slam tennis event of the year. So that'll be the main thing I'll be talking about when I come back. And then after the U.S. Open tennis comes to an end, that's when we'll have, the beginning of college football. And then not too long after that will be the beginning of the NFL season. So I think this is the right time for me to take a little break, since there's really not much. There's not too much news going on during this time of the year. I gotta blow my nose again. So yeah, I just think it's time for me to take a little hiatus, a little break on this podcast. But yeah, because I think this is the right time to do it. I remember last year, it was pretty much a whole year ago, the Summer Olympics was beginning during this time of the year, and I remember that was like the only thing I watched. Because I love the Olympics. Like, I really get into that, both summer and winter. So yeah, that was the only thing I was watching. I didn't watch any CFL, didn't watch any MLB, nothing else. Because the Olympics happens once every 4 years for the summer and winter. Next year we'll have the Winter Olympics, and let me tell you, that's going to be the only thing I'm going to be watching in February. Besides the Super Bowl, if the Super Bowl is if next year's Super Bowl is intriguing, okay, I'll watch that game. But if it's not, if I'm not excited at all, I'm going to skip it. I'm going to skip the Super Bowl if it's not exciting. Like, if it's a rematch from this year's, if it's going to be Chiefs-Eagles again, I don't think I'm going to watch it. So, yeah. But if it's like, oh my gosh, if it's like the Buffalo Bills against the Detroit Lions, oh, that's a Super Bowl America would watch. It is. It would be. Two teams that have never won it before. So, yeah. So, I think this is the right time for me to take a little break on this channel. But don't worry, I'm going to watch sports. I will still watch some sports during my time off. Obviously, CFL's number one. I'll watch some of that. And, yeah, that's basically it. So, yeah, again, I'll do one more episode before I take my official break. Me talking to you guys about my favorite sports podcast. And after that, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Alright? So, after 60 episodes, 7 months, I think it's time for me to take a break. And I will still listen to some sports podcasts during my time off, but I think I'm probably going to take a little break on listening to podcasts as well. Okay? Because here's the thing. I mentioned earlier, like, Dan Patrick, Adam Shine, they were on vacation, so they had a guest fill in. I didn't listen to the guest fill in. I didn't listen to it. I just moved on. Okay, what else is on the list that I can listen to that isn't on vacation, you know? So will I go on vacation? The answer is no. I'm not going to go on vacation. Listen, it's so hot in the summer. I would like to go to Canada 1 year. I would like to go to Canada to see a CFL game. That's like my dream. But I mentioned earlier that in a previous episode, I would like to go to Houston next year in March to the World Baseball Classic. Tickets are not available yet, so hopefully I'll get a seat ASAP, and I don't know how much they'll cost, but hopefully not too much, because that's also an event that doesn't happen every year, just like the Olympics, and it'll be Houston's first time hosting the World Baseball Classic, which is kind of surprising, you know. And finally, they'll be able to host one of the venues to be hosting the WBC. Alright? So, that's not until March of next year, but I'm really looking forward to that. And I've been kind of thinking about that lately. I think I really want to go to that. I think I really want to go to a game. Because I've been to that ballpark before, like I mentioned earlier. And I haven't been there in 8 years. Yeah, believe it or not, it's been 8 years since I last went to that stadium. So I think it's time for me to go back there. And I've always enjoyed the World Baseball Classic. I even watched some old games when they had it in 2009, 2013, so I just hope that they won't have the pitch clock and the today's MLB rules, because they had it in 2023, right? They didn't have the pitch clock in 2023. But after the World Baseball Classic came to an end in 2023, that was when they introduced the pitch clock for the 2023 regular season. So I'm really hoping that they won't have that, but I think they will. I'm afraid they will. And I say that because the pitch clock just makes the games much shorter. That doesn't, just because the games are much shorter doesn't mean the ticket prices are going down. Nope. They're still high. So that's why that sucks for the fans that pay good money. There was a game that was actually under 2 hours. That's ridiculous. Can you imagine paying good money and the game was only an hour and 55 minutes? And the final score was 1-0. Not much base hits. You're going to be pretty upset about that. The other night, the Houston Astros played the Seattle Mariners. That game was like 3 hours and 50 minutes because the game went into extra innings. Even though I really don't like that ghost runner rule in extra innings, like most people don't like that either. But hey, the game was longer. It's like, oh yeah, you got your money's worth. 3 hours and 50 minutes compared to an hour and 55 minutes. That's almost a 2-hour difference. So, but that's the thing, because that's the thing. I know there's a pitch clock, but it's not like football, basketball, or hockey where you have a game clock, where most of the games are about the same length. You know what I'm saying? So, baseball, you never know. Kind of like tennis, you never know. A tennis match, it varies, So, yeah. But anyways, I'm going to be taking a break on this channel. Yeah, because, other sports podcasts are doing it, so I think it's time for Keith Sports News to take a little break after the next episode, okay? The next episode will be, I guess it will be on Friday. And then after that, I'll be back on a Monday or whenever I decide to come back. So just make sure to turn on that notification bell. So yeah, I want to thank y'all for those of you that, if this is your first time following KSN, thank you very much. I'm glad you found this channel. And for those of you that have been following all year or since episode 1, that means you like hearing me talk about sports. And I appreciate you guys. So, yeah. That's basically it. So that is basically it. So once again, I'll do one more episode this week of me only talking about my favorite podcasts, which is quite a lot of them. So yeah, it might be another big episode. And after that, it'll be goodbye for now. So, yeah. Anyways, hey, you can see me on a different channel, or my clone's channel, whatever you want to call it, Eric Super Magnificent, which means there will be more uploads on that channel. So yeah, so that's a good thing. So that's the bright side. That's the bright side to things. Yeah. So yeah, guys. Thank you all very much. And I'll see you later this week to give you guys my favorite podcasts. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Keith's Sports News.